To go live. Hi, I'm Caroline Leavitt. I'm the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, the book initiative that was begun at the start of the pandemic to help independent bookstores, authors, and readers. And today, we are going to be talking with Bill Roorbach about Lucky Turtle. And I got to tell you, this book is so amazing. When I was reading it in galleys, I emailed Bill instantly because I was so overwhelmed by how brilliant the book was, and it really is. So before we talk, I just want to pay homage to my Lucky Turtle, this was my tortoise Minnie, who I had for 25 years. Nobody knows how old he was. He could have died at 105. And he was my litmus test for relationships. I married my husband because my husband would eat dinner at the table while Minnie would eat worms. So anyway, here's my introduction to Bill. Lily King says of this book, a thrilling, blistering tale of young love and old hate and the steady endurance of both. Kirkus Review, in a starred review, says an epic love story, no greater reading pleasure to be had anywhere. I love that, and that is absolutely true. Lucky Turtle is about a 16-year-old girl, Cedra, is that how you pronounce her name? I should have asked her. Cedra, okay, who's sent to a reform camp in Montana from suburbia. And there she meets this character, Lucky, who is part Chinese, part white, part Crow, and they fall in love. But the escape to a wilderness paradise turns into a kind of a nightmare, and they're impacted by racism and they separate. And the book is all about how they come back together, what else is going on, and it's truly an original and amazing story. Bill Roorbach is also the author of Life Among Giants, The Girl of the Lake. He was a Kirkus Prize winner for The Remedy for Love. He's received fellowships from NEA, and he's just a great, great friend. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's so good to see you. Did you say Caroline or Carolyn?
Caroline, please.
Caroline. Thank you,
Caroline
Caroline.
is a cheerleader. So anyway, I want to tell everybody out there, questions for Bill, pop them in the chat. If you want to buy Bill's book, and I'm telling you, you're going to want to buy this book, bookshop.org will connect you to your favorite indie, or you can just walk down the street to your favorite indie. Buy several copies. Okay, so Bill, I read that this book was inspired by 10 days you had in Montana. What were those 10 days about, and how exactly did they inspire this book?
Well, it was more than 10 days. It was all my high school summers.
Okay.
My mom thought I was heading down the wrong path, so she sent me out to stay with her Uncle Bill, who's a minister. And I feared, that he would really put the hammer down on me. But it turned out that he was just like me. He loved to wander through he's a fisherman. We would get in his Land Rover and drive out in the wilderness, and he would say, let's get this Land Rover stuck so I don't have to preach tomorrow. and then he'd say, and we do it because the assistant minister needs practice. He needs to be in charge sometimes. So he taught me so much stuff, and those summers really, those things when you're young stay with you. They stay in your soul and your heart, and it's kind of always been my subject. And finally, I approached it, but I couldn't seem to approach it with a male protagonist, and just making my protagonist a female changed everything.
Wow. But you do, in fact, have kind of a male protagonist in Lucky Turtle,
Yes.
who is well-versed in all the lore. What I loved about that is, though he's well-versed in it, he sort of brings Syndra into it. So, which was totally lovely. Speaking about faith, I love that so much of this book, at least to me, was about faith. Syndra believes that she and Lucky are kind of destined, and then she believes that they won't be together. And even when she sees evidence that Lucky is gone, in her heart, she knows somehow this can't be true. This can't be true. So my question to you is, without giving anything away, how did you know what the ending was going to be before you wrote it, or did it reveal itself to you as you wrote the novel? And did you yourself reveal on your heart as you wrote?
Yeah, that's the way I wrote this book, was finding it as I went, so much so, that at times I was not sure I was gonna find my way. It was so mysterious at times, who everyone was and why we were doing this, but slowly it did. Slowly it revealed itself to me. So there was a kind of faith in the writing too, like, I know it's there. I know I've done it before. I just have to keep slugging away at it. And I had a lot of friends read, and people gave me ideas. Uh, and it's interesting when you have people read, their misunderstandings are really helpful too. When they're not getting what you're trying to do, it helps you say to yourself, what am I trying to do? Because they don't get it, and yet I haven't offered it yet. You know.
That's so interesting. What was the biggest misunderstanding that people have?
Well, I, it's hard to remember now. It's been a long road, and once the book's done, it kind of forms into this life of its own, and that's hard for me to look back past what's in front of me now. It's like the way when my mother passed away after a long struggle with Alzheimer's. It took a long time to look back through the woman who'd been in front of me, to remember the beautiful person who'd raised me. So weirdly, my book is basically an Alzheimer's patient. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. You can see how people misunderstand me. That was pretty wacky metaphor. But my mother's so important in my thinking about this, in various ways. Her take on nature was part of it. Her sense that my uncle would be good for me was part of it. And the great freedom they gave me to just go be a Montana kid, in the summer only.
But as far as I know, you were also a city boy too. You had a band in New York City, and you were rock and rolling in the '70s. What was that like for you? Did you like the city? I had the
Yeah.
impression you did.
Well, that was after college, which I did
Right.
in Ithaca. I moved to New York City, which I loved. Oh my God. And I played in all these, bar bands, basically. Never got very far with it, but I did enjoy it. I love the city, and I love the country. They both have their own wilderness qualities. But the suburbs are where I grew up is what I don't love and where I don't thrive.
Right. Me
And
too.
you
Me
too.
too. There's something about the suburbs. I can live in the country as long as it's real country, and I love the city. I love the buzz of the city, but the suburbs just it's like wearing a heavy winter coat in the summer, and the coat's too tight, and
Oh,
you can't unbutton it, and not for me, not for me. So
yeah.
let's talk about time, because that was the thing that made my jaw drop open at your talent. It's from the very first where Cinder says, "My actual life begins with me being lucky, which is why I'm hurrying." I thought, what a connection between her and the reader, why I'm hurrying. She's telling us this great intimate story. And then you go to, say, chapter 24, which leaps ahead for Cinder to tell us all of a sudden about my son Rick, who's in his early 20s. And when I read that, I thought, oh my God, you didn't even prepare us. And yet it's perfect where it is. It absolutely works. So I want to know how you got your chronology to jump hoops so brilliantly. Did you map it up? Did you do it chronologically at first and then mix it up? Or how did that happen?
Well, this helpfully goes back to the previous question, which is what was the main misunderstanding that people had? And now that you asked this question, I'm like, it was about time, those layers of time. Uh, and originally I had another layer of time, which just was all the more troublesome for people. So to get that to work, the I don't know, the juxtaposition had to happen at a certain moment, where, um, and that moment just eventually, if I wrote the part, that part, but it was in the wrong place, and and until I wrote the thing that needed to happen right before it didn't fit. But somehow I just knew. I dropped it on top of there, and it answered all the questions my readers were having. Just doing that one strange thing, and then once you do it, there's little adjustments you have to make. So I made the adjustments to keep some clarity on it, and then you gradually blend the new time layer with the old one. So you feather it in, like a little bit of the new time layer and more of the old, and then a little more of the new, until you're all new, and the book ends in the new time layer, which is the present, the novel present.
Right. I love that you talked about this because I know a lot of well, not a lot, but there are some readers who do believe that a writer's job is sitting down and we just merrily write and it comes together. And to be absolutely truthful, I sometimes feel that every other writer is having an easy time writing their books except for me. So I'm very delighted to hear all the work that goes into your story. And I really appreciate your willingness to talk about it and how you sort of swim through it to get to the shoreline.
It was
I,
for me too, because some of my books were easier to write, and some were harder, and this is one of the hardest ones that took the longest. Um, and your swimming metaphor is really perfect, because that's also the way I comfort myself. It's like, this is a big lake I'm swimming across,
and there's sharks.
and there's and it's a lake with sharks. I mean, come on. And uh, you can get to the other shore, and eventually you do. And when you stand on the other shore, you can't say, well, I wish I hadn't swum the first part of the lake, because that was no fun. That's where the sharks were. I shouldn't have done that. But no, you must do that, because otherwise you don't get to the far shore. So you do the swimming.
Exactly right. I want to read a quote from another quote from Kirkus because there's so much conversation going on in this. Kirkus, in their starred review, said, "There's no lane stain for white guy Roorbach. His teenage girl narrator is flawless. Chinese, Haitian, and Native characters are beautifully done. Many sensitivity readers are thanked in the acknowledgments." I was so happy you did not stay in your lane. I really am very wary of the feeling that writers can only write about our own lives because A, what fun is that? B, how boring, and C, if you do your research and you are sensitive to stuff, that's part of the fun of living another life. So I wanted to know about, the kind of research you did. Were you scared at all about doing this? And I hope the answer to that is no.
Well, I was scared at times, for sure. And that's partly why I consulted friends. But we say writing about our own lives, but even to write about my own life would include people from across every possible spectrum. I mean, friends, colleagues, family members, they cover many human possibilities, because there's endless human possibilities, of course. But to write a novel that's afraid to be in the world I inhabit, just that's what's scary, is that the idea that it might not be possible. But I think it's important to be sensitive to what
Of course.
almost anyone would think, and to hear what they have to say. And I loved we had official sensitivity readers too, and they taught me a lot of stuff, and one of them is a novelist herself, and she identified as a Black woman. That was how she she loved the novel, first of all, and she talked about it as a novel. And then she said, I had a great time in this novel. I think the Black characters are individuals. And I'm glad they're there. There's so many. And um, the uh, but here's a couple of things to think about. And then she'd said, as a Black woman reading your book, I had a few things made me uncomfortable. And there were 10 or 12 of them. She said, I wouldn't change all of them or even any of them, but I just want you to know that I had this experience, and it's up to you whether that's what you want to have happen when people read your novel or not. And she gave me these 10 or 12 places. They weren't suggestions, they were places she felt uncomfortable. And then I dealt with almost all of them. Some of them I thought, well, and she had said, don't feel like you have to change everything or anything, but just, and I dealt with it. And in dealing with them, I made my characters better, and I made my novel better, and I made the interrelationships in the novel better thanks to this reading. And it's easy to take these readings defensively, but I took it as a student listening to a really great teacher. She was such a good reader and teacher, for one example.
I think that makes a big difference because a lot of times, uh, I hate the word sensitivity, but a
Mm.
lot of times those readers can give you details you wouldn't know that are just so colorful and so wonderful that you get excited and say, I have to use that. I absolutely have to use that. So let's talk about love, because I believe it was Kirkus that called you the crown prince of love stories, or something like that, for The Remedy of Love, which was a Kirkus Prize finalist. And I think it's safe to say, from what I know about you, that you're a man of deep feeling who truly knows love. It's evident in your books and how you talk about your family and where you live and nature. So I want to ask, were you always that way? And what do you think love has taught you? And what has writing about love taught you? Three-part question. Bonus points.
Love, love, love. Um, was I always this way? Yeah, I was. I think that's just, I don't know how that came about or what it is, or I think it was a certain amount of neglect as a kid. There were 5 of us. My mother was overwhelmed at all times, and my dad was a corporate guy who was not particularly available all the time. Great guy, great dad, don't get me wrong. But I had a big empty spot that I would fill by wandering around in the woods in my suburban setting. But there was a lot of woods, and there's less now. But I would wander all over the forest, and I think that filled me up and just made me so. That love of nature helps you see people as part of nature, part of the world, and it helps you. You don't get irritated with a robin for not doing your bidding, or you don't yell at the you don't yell at the trees for blowing in the wind. So I think it's a good lesson. But I don't know exactly what way you're talking about. Like I'm not quite sure what I am really like, but I do tend to appreciate love stories, and I love rom-coms. And I love all the stuff that men aren't supposed to like very much. So um, I'm always surprised to learn that I'm not the right demographic for such and such a novel, because I eat them up. But that's not exactly love. Love is also how good works. And
Right. That's a great quote. It is. It's how goodness works in the world.
so
Definitely.
in every effort to be good leads you back to love. Being more loving, and obviously uh, I'm bad at it sometimes, and I'm good at it other times, like most of us. And sometimes I'm really good at it. And when you are writing a novel, as you can take the part you're pretty good at, and you keep coming back to it, making it better. You can, through revision, you can write better than you can actually write. So, and with the help of your various readers. So and I think that's true with building yourself as a loving
Yeah.
person. You revise and revise. As William Stafford said, there's a title of his book, You Must Revise Your Life. So that,
Oh, okay. I want to talk about just this great photograph on your website of your office, and it's this wonderful chaos. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, "Oh my God, this is so great!" First, because my office looks like that. It's like it's just absolute chaos everywhere, and also because when I had a job a long time ago, I was always yelled at in my performance reviews for having a messy office, and so tell us how messiness messiness adds to your creativity, and why you posted that wonderful photograph. And I'm so glad you did because I think chaos is creativity.
don't even think it looks very messy.
Oh, you didn't?
I think I probably cleaned up to have that picture. Yeah, I think it's important. If I see a clean desk, I'm like, nope, I'm out of here. I went to see uh, uh, a lawyer about something perfectly benign, uh, and his desk was just thrashed, and I thought, this guy is okay. He had stuff stacked everywhere. He knew where everything was. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it reflects our minds too, right? There's more. You have to be comfortable with chaos to be an artist of any kind. Uh,
I
you
agree.
have to free yourself from the need for control. So maybe the desk is just
That's,
it,
that's right. Or a different kind of control. I think it's more about the giving up control to let things in. I mean, our whole house is chaos, but that's how we like it. So, I mean, I get suspicious when I see photographs of people's homes that are, there's no books, everything's really neat. There's no newspapers thrown on the floor. There's like, what kind of life is that?
um, well, anyone can clean up for a picture, so.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's true.
But
That's
I love when you walk into someone's house and they say, excuse me, excuse the mess." You're like,
like, no, bring
"Oh,
it on.
no, this is how I learn who you are."
Bill, I read that you're devoted to Fitzgerald's Nick Carraway, the narrator of The Great Gatsby. I happen to love Nick Carraway, and I take great pleasure in telling people who believe that Gatsby is the main character that no, he's not. It's actually Nick Carraway's book. So tell us what inspired you about Carraway.
Well, that really came into play with Life Among Giants.
Right, right.
Where I, uh, I did sort of a Gatsby-like story. I made a female Gatsby, more or less. Mostly less, but the thing. Okay, it's not so much that I mean, I love Nick Carraway, but the stuff he notices, that's what I love about him, is the noticing. And that's really Fitzgerald. But just I never forget those things like Daisy Buchanan floating up off the couch, just little images. The guy's such a good writer. And I've abandoned him for long stretches at different times. Uh, but he's one of the books where when I was teaching, I bring it back to teach, and every time I read it, it was something new was there to be found. Unlike some other favorites where I teach them and go, I've worn this one out.
That's interesting. I agree. There's always something new to learn about that. In fact, the first time that I read Gatsby, where I realized Nick was the important character, was such a revelation for me. It just sort of blew the book open, and I got so excited. So, talk to us about your teaching. Did that inform your writing at all? Did you feel like writers were teaching you something? Like, what was that whole experience like for you?
Well, I taught for like 25 years in the university, academy, as they call it. And I love teaching, but I got to tell you, I love not teaching more. A lot more. So I stopped in April 2009 was my last class. I was at Holy Cross at that time. I had a great job there. That was a good segue out into this world, you know. Um, uh, so I don't know, the students, I found it to work both ways. Like it fed me, but it also left me exhausted and starving at times. You know, there's so much to do, and so much of it isn't about teaching. So much of it's about the committees and the. You know, I remember being on the parking garage committee at Ohio State. You know, and the chair was like, all right, no one wants to do it, but it's going to be good for tenure, believe me, you know. So I'm on the parking, and what I had no idea how powerful it was, because people are coming up and they had assigned departments were assigned areas of the parking garage, and people are coming to me going, you know, the art department really needs the part that's over by the studios, and then it was hilarious. I mean, anyway, but imagine how much time that wasted. That
It's a waste of time. Yeah.
spent daydreaming, which is what writing gets built on. This is my daughter's imitation of me gardening. It could be for anything I'm doing, but she would go. I'd say I've been gardening, and she's like, "Oh, I saw you." Daydreaming, you know.
But your daughter is very creative too.
Yeah,
She's correct. Your wife is an artist, so you're a family of creatives.
yeah, it's been coming to. I got the book out, and my daughter just got into RADA for the fall semester, and she just got cast as the lead in a play at St. Bart's Community Theater in New York City. I mean, just fantastic.
It's
I know
amazing.
your son's an actor too, right?
He's an actor and a writer too, and it's but the message we've always given him was from the time he was 5 is we don't care what you do in life as long as you love it. And it was just something we told him when he was 5, and it showed up on his college personal essay. And I thought, oh my God, he listened. You know, these things come through. But I feel like it's important sometimes to have somebody who knows what it's like.
Yeah, that's and it also gives them that safe space. So I saw an actor. What was Jennifer Lawrence, of all people? I saw her. Someone said to her, "Wow, you're part of a group of young actors who have all really gone through the roof. Do you ever talk to each other about why you and not someone?" And she goes, "Yes, we do. And one night we all just talked about this. What do we have in common that made it us and not someone else?" And all of us said, "Good parents. We're going
Oh,
to let us,
interesting.
or good or bad parents, but parents who let us do what we wanted to do and encouraged us and never said a negative word about it." So,
Right.
and our generation, it's more. We had parents who would say, "Well, okay, you want to write, but it would probably be a good idea to get a law degree," you know, that kind
Yes.
of stuff.
The
Which
backup.
it's very damaging because it fills you with doubt. You know, my
Yeah.
parents were the ones who said, "We uh, we don't care what you do, just don't do it here," or or even more, so, they would be like, "We don't care what you do," you know. The neglect was difficult, but I think that also helps make a writer because
Yeah, I
you
think, yeah,
always
I don't know many writers with happy childhoods, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. My message that I always got from a very 1950s mom was, well, running can be a good hobby while you are a mom or this, or if you want to have a job, you can be a school teacher or a nurse.
yeah, that's our generation, right?
That's the whole generational thing. But
You
yeah,
know, in terms of happy childhood, I wanted to write a memoir called A Happy Childhood, because I really did have a happy childhood. I had no clue anything different was going on from what
that's
you know,
lucky.
future therapist might hope. You know, I just thought the woods were great, and that's where I spent all my time. I was just this loner in the forest, and I loved it. I loved it.
That's
And writing is partly a loner's occupation. You know, I mean,
I actually can remember being allowed when I was a little girl to go in the woods behind our home by
Oh,
myself for hours, which, when I think about that now, I think, oh my God. But of course, nothing ever happened to me. I mean, I was perfectly safe. But there's something wonderful about being a child in the woods and, looking at plants and the earth and just amazing. So before we go to audience questions, that reminds me of a story about you. In September 1999, you tossed 10 bottles into Temple
oh
Street.
my God.
You had a message inside each one, which was a headline, "Help," which was meant to help you study rivers and poetry and whatever else. I know there's a story behind this, and I want to hear it. So tell us.
I don't know. I was writing a book called Temple Stream, and I was trying to like look at the stream from as many angles as possible. So I had scientists go with me, poets, painters, a lot of scientists, because there's just a stream is so many things. Uh, and one of the things it is where it goes. So I was just, and I think it's the most romantic thing, the message in the bottle. So, and it's part of some of those old Victorian novels. So I
Did
just,
you
I
did you
just
get
tried it.
responses?
I just tried it. I had all these clear bottles. I put the message in with a stamped self-addressed envelope to make it easy. And I thought I would get one back, or maybe I'd get two back, and that would be a dream. But I think I got 7 of them back or something. I mean, just spectacular. And one of them was from like 20 yards downstream. A little girl up the road found it, and she's still now. That's a long time ago. I mean, she's now a woman and lives in Port. She's a friend of mine now.
Oh my God, that is so wonderful.
How I met her, because I threw a message in a bottle and a little girl found it. Now she's a restaurant person in Portland.
That's incredible. That's
Other
incredible.
other people too. Some people were like, found your bottle, thought you'd want it back. Some people are like, oh my God, this is like this weird miracle. I mean, everyone, the different ways people thought of it were really. And
I
the worst one was I got an empty envelope back.
Oh, excuse me.
The
That's
envelope
rude.
had been damaged probably, and whatever someone put in there had fallen out. So
Right, right. I didn't think
I
of that.
really want to know where that went. But one day, I hope still one day that I'll get a letter from uh, Western Africa, from some coast, Somalia or someplace.
That would be hilarious and wonderful. Do
But,
you ever have you done that since? Thrown out messages in bottles?
yeah, that's my books. I throw them out there, and every once in a while, I make a friend.
That's right. That's right. So let's talk about my last question for you before we take audience questions is about you as a person.
Oh,
So, Life Among Giants is in development for an HBO series.
yeah.
You've won the Maine Readers Prize, fellowships, the NEA, and yet you're the most modest, down to earth person I know. It's like you have a heart of good. How do you manage that? What keeps you grounded like that?
Um, the HBO killed the show after
Oh, you did? Oh,
2 years of development. But what was great? I wanted to have contempt for the TV people, but they were all brilliant. And it
okay.
was a big team, 2 production companies, HBO. Brad Pitt was one of the, Plan B had bought the rights, and so it was awesome. And they were so smart. They were narrative geniuses. I learned so much from them. And after 2 years, I wrote with they gave me a co-writer. I worked with this wonderful guy, this Finnish guy named Mikko Alan. What a mind. And he was good at the big picture, the structure, the TV stuff. I was good at the writing. I'm at the dialogues part of it. We both had a good role. It was wonderful. And when they killed it, they flew me out there, and at a meeting, they announced that they were killing the show. So producers were yelling at each other. But my main emotion was relief, because it was very stressful. And I had made a lot of money, and I learned a lot. So on to the next thing. Okay,
That's
the question was, how do I stay centered? Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and I'll go right back to nature again. That's how I do it. I spend a lot of time outside, mostly in the garden, but these days. But uh, just a lot, and more. More and more devoted to friends, uh, and working harder uh, on letting friends fill the love hole rather than whatever else I might have, like hiding in books or hiding in the woods or, so.
That's lovely. Mark, our producer, Mark Cecile, do we have any questions, any audience questions yet? Yes, we do. From Trisha Blanchett. What is Bill's writing routine like? Every day or just whenever inspiration strikes?
Well, um, I try to work at least a little every day, even if it's 3 minutes or even if it's 1 minute. That works because it keeps the thread going. But there'll be plenty of periods where I don't do anything at all for a month or two. There was even a whole year where I just worked on my house and declared it my art project.
Wow.
Working on the house and just letting myself enjoy that and suffer that and not the whole time be like, oh, I should be working, I should be writing, I just let more and more. The older I get, the better I am at just saying, it's okay not to write.
Yes.
It's happened a lot. I used to stress about it, but either way, if I'm not writing, I cannot write and stress about it, or I cannot write and not stress about it. So I'm getting better at that. So my routine is, when I've got a project going, my routine is, yes, daily, daily, daily. Inspiration doesn't work. The only inspiration is actually the writing. That's where I discover
Right.
everything. And the best discoveries are during revision, during restructuring. That's when all my very best story ideas. That's where that's where Sindra starts talking about her 20-year-old. That happened in revision.
Wow.
That
Wow.
whole thread happened in revision. That wasn't there in the original draft. So that's my answer is, yes, write every day, never wait for inspiration, but don't beat yourself up if that's not how it works.
I love that. Yeah, I don't really believe that you should wait for the muse either. I think that's part of the myth of what writers do. We have another question. Sarah Carlson says, "Is there a difference in the writing vibe or experience between Temple, Southern Maine, or other places where you write?"
I love that question. Temple is the town in Western Maine, near where I lived for so long, and now I share that place and Scarborough, Maine, down by Portland. We have a house down here now too. Um, so um, the vibe lives inside the story you're telling. It doesn't live in the place you're writing. It does when you first sit down. That vibe is very present, but within a short time, and then for the time you're writing, the place is missing, and what's there is the story, and so that's the vibe. So this book, if I cataloged where all it's been written, it was written in dozens of people's guest rooms, hotels, on the side of a stream here, at a funeral there, at someone's hospital waiting room, and that's where that 5 minutes comes in. Waiting for my daughter to be out of dance class, sit in the car and work. I just grab the moments where I can. So much of this was written in airplanes, and also at my desk. That's the revision I get to do more purposefully and sitting down. But I've gotten good at, and this is a good skill to develop, gotten good at sitting down and going. And the way you do that is you just you get to it as much as you can, even if it's for a few minutes, so you don't lose the thread. So when you sit down and you've got 5 minutes, you know what you could do in 5 minutes.
Right.
I could write this little scene, or I could fix this little mess I made yesterday, or whatever.
We have another question from Shelley Burbank. "You must get many story ideas. Do you know which one is the one to work on?" Oh,
Well, how do you know which one?
how do you
I get
know?
so many ideas, and now as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh gosh, I need more lives. And the other thing I say to myself, I need to write more, but it turns out you can't just say that and do that because uh, it's exhausting. I don't know. I am trying to get more, more of my ideas. I have so many ideas. Who was it who wrote I think they wrote a book called "The Books I Didn't Write." And it was, it
Yeah.
was that. It was the outlines of like 40 books, like a page or two about 40 or 50 that he never wrote.
Oh, really? Were the ideas good?
All of them were fantastic.
Oh my God, I'm gonna go look at that. What is that called? The books I never wrote?
Remember something like that. The books I never wrote. And
Oh, great.
if you find it, I will be very happy to.
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna look for that. We have time for one more question if we have one. Looking forward to the new book, Bill. I'm curious. This is a great question. What is the best bit of feedback you have ever gotten from a reader on any of your books?
Oh
That's a
my
good
God,
question.
that's a hard one
Yeah.
because um, well, okay, I think the one that comes to mind as the very best was my friend. Uh, yeah, well, I won't say his name, but my friend of mine died, and his I was friends with both of his brothers too. They were all close in age, and uh, and uh, years after he died, 10 years after he died, his mother wrote me and said, "Oh my God, I just picked up." Oh, his name is Sandy Elliott because his name is in the book. I just picked up Summers with Juliet again, and I felt as if Sandy was alive again. Right, I saw him again. I heard him. I smelled him. I hugged him through via just the image, the story you told about him, and I was like, okay, I think that's the best one of all.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of amazing, Lucky Turtle by Bill Roorbach, bookshop.org, your favorite indie. Here we have twins. It's a wonderful, wonderful, amazing book. I want to thank all of you for being here, for listening. This interview is going to live forever on our YouTube station. And I want to thank our fabulous producer, Mark Cecil, for all your help. And I want to thank Bill especially for being here. We'll see you all later. Thank you.